What is up, guys? My name is Jonah, and welcome to episode 4 of 3D game programming in Java. I'm really excited about today's tutorial because we will hopefully actually be, creating a graphics thing and drawing pixels to the screen. When I say hopefully, I mean definitely. I don't care if this tutorial ends up being half an hour long. We will, as God is my witness, we will draw pixels today. I'm going to try and make it under 20 minutes. But we'll see. I'll stop talking and we'll start. Last time we created an array of pixels, and now we're actually going to fill that array. We're going to draw stuff to each of those pixels. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to make a method called draw, and we'll create an object out of this render class. And we will also create two integers, x offset and y offset. Okay. And we're going to create a for loop in here. I'll explain what that is in a minute. And y is less than render.height. That's why we created that object, because we want to be able to access height and stuff like that. Y++. Okay. And in here we'll create call it pixels, all the y pixels. So y is in y, that's x, that's y. Y is vertical. Y plus y offset. Okay. Traditionally you would call it offs. That's sort of like a convention in graphics programming, but I'm just going to call it offset. I'll explain what that is in a minute as well. First of all, a for loop. So basically a for loop in Java is a way of doing things multiple times, so running the same code multiple times. And the way that it works is, first of all, we're creating an integer called y, and we're setting the value of it to 0. And we're saying as long as the value of this is less than this, so less than height, height will actually be set from inside display, or maybe another class, I haven't decided yet. So don't worry about that, because obviously we haven't actually set a value to height yet. But as long as y is less than height, keep doing this, and each time you do this, add 1 to y. So the first time it does it, y will 1 will be added to y, so y will become 1. Next time it does it, it'll become 2, 3, 4, and blah 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 until it becomes this, and then it'll stop until until it's less than this. So as long as it's less than this, it'll keep doing this. And what we're doing here is we're pretty much creating a variable and assigning, y plus y offset. So that'll change, obviously. And the way this works is in ComPaint.net. I've already made a grid this time, so I don't have to waste time doing that. The way this works is we want to fill these pixels, sort of. We want to draw to these pixels. So as you can imagine, y equals 0, let's just say it's this pixel here. Y equals 1, it's this pixel here. So basically, we'll do that until it covers the whole height. And what we've effectively done is we've sort of filled all these pixels. Right? Now the next thing we need to do is obviously, fill the x values as well. So what you could assume is that, okay, let's just do the same thing. Let's create another for loop and change it to x and change this to, obviously width and, x offset x, right? And that would work. Well, it would, but it's not going to give us the desired result, because basically what it's going to do is you're saying, okay, let's do the same thing for x, so it's going to fill this area. So now we've sort of got both of these areas filled up. But, what about this area? Alright? We've only filled up these two. So we also need to fill all of this area. So how are we going to do that? And it's actually pretty simple, fortunately. I worked this out the other day. Well, I didn't really work it out. Well, I did work it out, but sure, someone's done it before. Yeah. So basically, the way that this works is that we're saying, okay, so let's put this for loop inside this for loop. So what we're getting here is basically for each y pixel that it creates, let's create a bunch of x pixels until x becomes equal to or greater than the width. So basically, when y equals 0, it'll create this. When y equals 1, it'll create, all of these. And so, at the end, we get the whole screen covered. Or basically, the whole size of, we might only draw this area. So render.height would be this amount of pixels, and render.width would be that amount of pixels. Yeah, so that's how that works. I won't close paint.nav, we might need it later. Yeah, so now that we've sort of got this worked out, we actually need to fill that array. So the way we're going to do that is we're simply going to go xpix plus ypix times width. And again, we don't actually need to do anything for height, because our height is sort of, because width is sort of each of these. Width, we don't need to do anything for height because we've sort of put height inside of width, if that makes sense. And we're gonna actually assign that to these pixels. And x plus y times render dot width. Okay, fantastic. By the way, if it wraps lines, I actually fix this later. If you go into Formatter, and because what it will do with the default thing is it'll actually wrap the line like this. So the way you fix that is you go to Windows, Window, Preferences, go into Java, Code Style, Formatter, hit Edit, and set this to whatever you want. I just times it by 10. That should be enough. Okay, awesome. Yeah. Okay, so now we need to actually render these pixels. Let's create a new class for that. Yeah, we'll create a subclass. Whoa. Okay, don't worry about that. Right-click, new class. We'll put it inside of graphics, and we'll call it screen. And extends render. So basically, we're saying inherit all of the good stuff of render, all of the stuff of render. And it'll create a constructor for us automatically. Super means that it's inheriting basically width and height from here, width and height. Okay. So yeah, what we're going to do here is we're sort of going to test. We're going to use this in a way to test out this code. Because we want to do that by drawing pixels to the screen. So I'll create a method called render, and we'll draw. Okay, yeah, we'll draw stuff to that in a minute. And draw, by the way, I'm getting from here, but we haven't actually created the object yet. So let's do that really quick. First thing I'm going to do is create an object of render. I'm just going to call it test because we're just testing out the stuff. And I'm going to draw test to 0 to 0. And the zeros are the x offset and the y offset. And I'll tell you about offset in a minute. Basically, where I'm getting these parameters from is from here. So the actual object, render. So in this case, we've actually called render, test. Because we're just testing this out. And offset, y offset are the next two parameters. So we've set them to 0 to 0. Now the way that these two offset work, and this is actually going to be really important because I'm actually going to demonstrate that stuff later. Is that this is y plus y offset, so it's going to be y plus whatever the offset is. So if we change the offset to 5, it's going to offset that pixel by 5 pixels. Make sense? We could also call this, x position, but it's just a convention in graphics programming to call this offset. So I've called it offset, but yeah, it's basically just displacing the position of x and of y to our liking. Okay, and once we've done that, we're just going to create test equals new render, and let's just say we'll create a 256 by 256. So we're just creating a square of pixels. why these numbers even work is because if we go back to int render, you'll see that I actually put int width and int height. Okay, so we're actually telling it what the width and height is now, so that we can actually use that in the future. Render.height. We're saying it's now 256. So do this 256 times. Hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, tell me. I'll spend another half hour explaining it. Okay, let's just create a for loop as well. It's a convention in Java to use I, if you don't have a name for it. So, here we've set it to y and x because we're sort of doing y and x. But if we just wanted to do stuff a bunch of times and we can't really think of a name for it, then use I. That's just a convention. You can name it whatever you like. And as long as I is less than 256 times 256, could just work out that number using a calculator, but Java can do that for us. So why not? And we're just gonna use, we're gonna use something called random. So random equals new random. And random is basically a Java utility, and it's used to generate a stream of pseudo-random numbers. Basically, it's going to create a random number for us, which is good because we want to sort of randomize like the pixels, the color of the pixels and stuff like that. And we need to actually put that under super because super needs to be first because that's how super works. Okay, random. Oh, sorry, not random. What is it? Pixels. Rather, test.pixels because we're using pixels from render. Test.pixels I. And I is from here, so it sort of changes every time. Every time we complete a loop of this for loop. Random.nextInt. Okay. Fantastic. That's good. Okay, okay. The thing we need to do now is initialize that graphics adapter and actually, make a graphics display out of it. First of all, let's get rid of render because we've actually changed that to a subclass which we've called screen. So screen equals new screen width height. And while I'm at it, we need to import screen, of course. Well, yeah, first of all, we need to import screen. Second of all, we actually need to make an object out of it. So private screen. And yeah, we're going to use something called BufferedImage, and we're going to call it img, short for image. Let's import this. And the way it's going to work is it's basically like a graphics thing. New buffered image. And what are the parameters? Yeah, it's width, height, and the color, which is BufferedImage dot. Oh, thank God for Eclipse's little thing. Otherwise, I can't remember it. RGB, fantastic. Type int RGB. Red, green, and blue colors. Okay, wonderful. We have color. And the other thing we want to do is actually, oh yeah, okay, we need to create pixels, and we'll create a separate pixels, private int pixels, and then we'll assign them to these pixels in a minute. To these pixels, the array that we created there. So pixels equals, okay. We'll use something called a data buffer int, and image dot get raster dot get data buffer dot get data. Okay. What's up with this? Can't be resolved. Oh yeah. Eclipse sometimes doesn't do this properly. Let's copy that into here, and we might have to manually import it. I think. Yeah, it's located in the same thing. This should work. Yep, fantastic. Yeah, you'll have to manually import it. So it's located in the same amount as it's located in the same folder as BufferedImage. So simply, change BufferedImage, copy it, and change it to data buffer int, because that's what it's called. Okay, I think we're done on this front. In this place. Yeah, okay. Um, let's render it. We'll use something. Okay, we need to initialize something called a buffer strategy. BS equals this dot get buffer strategy. That's right. And a buffer strategy is another thing we need to import. And it's like a graphics thing as well that we need. And now we actually need to, set. We actually need to create. We need to initialize this buffer strategy. And the way we do that is, okay, first of all, you have to think about this. Render is sort of being updated every time because render is in our while running loop in the run method. So but we only want to actually start this buffer strategy once. We don't want to start the graphics thing multiple times. We don't want a lot of instances of the same thing running. We only want to start buffer strategy once. So the way we do that is we go if BS, so buffer strategy, is null. Okay, introduce something new. Double equal signs means check if it is. It compares it. Is BS null? If we put 1, it's basically assigning null to BS. So it's an assignment operator. So it's saying BS equals null. So of course, whatever's going to be here, this condition is always going to be true because we've just assigned it to that. And equals with, it checks, is it null? And if it is, do this. And what we want to do here is actually create the buffer strategy. And we're going to use the parameters of 3 because we want to create a 3-dimensional game. If we were creating a 2D game, we'd put 2. But for this, we need 3. And after that, we don't want to do that more than once, so return. Okay. Next thing we'll do is we'll create a for loop. Again, I equals 0. I is less than width times height. So again, we want to create those pixels. I plus plus. So basically do this 480,000 times because 800 times 600 is 480,000. Okay. And what we're going to do here is we want to assign pixels, with the array of I, which will change every time, to, what do we call that object? Screen. To screen.pixels. I as well. Okay. I think that's, of course, we need to actually use Java's graphics. Graphics G equals bs.get draw graphics, I think it's called. Yeah, okay, we need to import this first of all. G again, this is just like a convention. You usually name it G. G.dispose. Again, that's sort of like, we haven't actually drawn it yet. Do that in a minute. And bs.show. We need to show it. What is it? Draw image, yeah. Okay, that's a lot of parameters. Width, these are offsets. Width, height. Yeah, that's good enough. I don't need any of this. Okay. I think we're good. One thing we actually need to do probably is screen.render. And yeah, that should work. Let's test it out. Yep, there we go, guys. We have pixels. Yay. Okay. Awesome. We made it in 19 minutes. Okay. I'm not actually gonna touch any of this. Make sure that you guys are following along. Make sure you've copied this code into your Eclipse or into whatever thing you're using. And yeah, and actually before we go, we'll just take a closer look at these pixels. We'll just times it by 20. Okay, pixels. Haha, and they're randomly generated. Their color is randomly generated. Anyway, we'll talk about this. We'll talk about even animating this stuff and all of that good stuff tomorrow. Okay, so make sure if you're not already subscribed, go ahead, click subscribe so that you don't miss a video. And yeah, so next time it's going to be really exciting. We're going to start doing some awesome stuff with these pixels. See you guys later. Bye.